Are you a business owner or manager who needs assistance increasing your profit margin and building a strong workforce? Well, now is the time to take advantage of our employer services. The Central Region Missouri Job Centers are ready to help today. Available at no cost to you, we offer a variety of employer services, including job matching, consulting, work opportunity tax credits, on the job training, incumbent worker training, transition assistance, and more. You can get all the details at cwdregion.com/employer services, and I will share the link in the show notes. We look forward to assisting you with all your employer needs today. Now, let's get to today's episode. Welcome to the Workforce Link podcast, where we're offering forward-thinking conversations for the workforce, linking employers and job seekers to a brighter tomorrow. I'm your host, Sunday Jo Graham with the Central Workforce Development Region, and I'm glad to be back for another episode today. So today's topic is one I think we don't talk about enough: mental health in the workplace. We're going to dive into some tough and important topics today, including how your organization can implement a mentally healthy workplace, misconceptions or myths surrounding mental health in the workplace, some proactive steps that employees can take to prioritize their mental health, and more. And we're not doing it alone. Today we'll be visiting with Kyle Duford, author, brander, speaker, and thought leader. He's the president of the Brand Leader, specializing in crafting outstanding advertising and branding for global brands looking to own winnable market share. A former magazine editor, he spent much of his career focused on e-commerce in the fashion, outdoor, and sports industries. Kyle's unique blend of advertising, branding, and digital expertise allows him to create and lead some of the foremost brands through his work at the Brand Leader. As a thought leader focusing on business leadership, Duford grew the agency from 5 people to more than 30 in just 3 years, winning 5 Best Places to Work awards in the process. He prides himself on growing people first and building high-performing teams based on trust and vulnerability. Drawing on his personal and professional experience, he facilitates meaningful conversations on building teams, brands, personal faith, and men's mental health, especially at work. So without further ado, let's get to today's interview with Kyle Duford on how to create a mentally healthy workplace. Thanks for being on the show today, Kyle. I really appreciate it. Appreciate taking time out to be with us today.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited about this and to talk about what we get to talk about today. It's a privilege, so thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I think we're talking about a topic today, mental health, which is something that probably isn't talked about enough.
If at all in certain circles, and I believe it should be talked about quite a bit and with no shame and with complete transparency. I think that's important. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, complete transparency. I love that. So, what do you think are some effective strategies or some initiatives that organizations can implement to create a mentally healthy workplace?
There's a lot of people out there who can probably speak to that from a scientific, psychological view better than myself. So this is purely from a leader's standpoint. I believe it's just acceptance first, acceptance and empathy for what people are going through. You know, I heard a great definition recently of empathy is that you don't necessarily need to go through what the person has gone through, but you need to understand where they are at the moment
Mm-hmm.
and be there for them. And I think that's really important. And so I might not experience, a death of a parent. I might not experience the death of a child or, things like that. But if those things happen, I can be there for them. And so empathy and being empathetic to your staff is huge. I'm one of those people who's like, just get your work done. We definitely have time constraints and things, but I'm not concerned with like be here at a certain time. And so because of that, it's like people can go and take the time they need. If they need a mental health day, if they need to sleep in a little bit, if they need to take a rest or to get some sunlight, I think that stuff is really important. And so I don't know what maybe the clinical words for those things are, but I think it's just kind of grace and kindness is let people, exercise their human right to, to live and to live in a complex world where we're bombarded with, things like this content all the time and social media and all these things that we need a break. And we need as leaders to allow that so they can be more resilient at their job. I think this could be a safe place for people at work, and the new generations coming in really need a place where they can feel safe. So I'm all for it. I think that's really what we need to be doing.
Yeah, and I don't think that we necessarily need a clinical definition. I mean, I think what you said is perfect. We need empathy, we need grace, we need mercy, and I think sometimes we can confuse sympathy and empathy. Um,
Yeah.
and I think really understanding that more matters.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's a great way of putting it for sure. I've had a lot of people in my office. Almost everyone in my office is sorry. Everyone in our office has been in my office at some point talking about something personal that they either just need guidance on or help, or they just want a sounding board, or sometimes they just want to vent, or sometimes they just want to,
Hmm.
close their eyes on my sofa because they just need a break. And all of those things are valid. All of those things are allowing people to deal with whatever their mental health struggle is in their own way is doing exactly what we should be doing. So there's not a one size fits all. So that's a big part of it, is just being there for people. And we're in this society today, we're really not there for people. I can't count my friends on more than a hand, close,
Hmm.
dear friends that I could confide in, because we're such a fragmented digital world. And so if I can help foster an environment where people can feel a real tangible connection, not necessarily with me, but with colleagues, or feel safe in an environment that fosters that, then they might have a fighting chance. And that's really important to me. The Gen Z that's coming in today, I mean, it's the highest number of depression and anxiety and suicide rates of any generation previously. They're the most connected and yet the most least connected generation of all
Hmm.
time, and their suicide rates are higher than anybody. 1 out of 2 LGBTQ kids have thought about suicide, and they're by their senior year of high school. Like, there's so many horrible stats surrounding that generation, that then they come into the workforce. And if you're the one who's not helping them, then you're hurting them. And so I believe
Hmm.
we have a responsibility to be there for particularly those new folks coming into the workforce.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that for just a minute, cuz I've heard employers say, you were talking about the Gen Z. Well, I'm not going to be their babysitter. They just need to come in and do the job. And I think we get confused on that. There's a big difference in thinking that we have to be their babysitter versus trying to direct them in the right path. And I know for a lot of Gen Z, they need to understand why, and
Hmm.
when they're on board with the mission of what the job is, they will do the job. What can you speak to that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had some of the stats in front of me. But I just gave a talk on this recently. If you look at the boomer generation, and then mine, which is Gen X, and then millennials, and then Gen Z, the further down you go to the younger folks, the importance at the workplace shifts drastically. And it shifted from security, job security, pay, longevity, legacy, for the boomer generation. And that makes sense, right? I mean, my parents worked 9 to 5 jobs at the same place for 30 years. It was
Mm-hmm.
the typical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not just that people look at this and interpret it as laziness, like, oh, they switch jobs, or they're too transient. No, they're on a mission to find a place where they feel
Right.
secure. I believe that's what's happening. And they're just
Me
going
too.
from place to place to place, trying to find a connection that they're so desperately in need of. Now, I have 6 children. All of them are firmly in Gen Z. And it's the oldest one is the oldest 2 are in the workplace. The youngest ones are not yet in it. And I try to kind of caution them, like, hey, the world is not like it is at home, and the friends you have on Instagram or TikTok are not your real friends, and let's figure out, so you have coping mechanisms to deal with, because they're statistically in
Mm-hmm.
that group of people that suffer from that. So I believe it's just a matter of, it's not babysitting, it's providing an environment where they can thrive. It's like saying that you don't
Yes.
want to be a gardener because you have a weed in a pot. It's like, no, you have a beautiful flower, and if you don't tend to it, then it's going to die. You have to give it room, you have to give it space, and let it do its thing. I firmly believe in the
Mm-hmm.
spirit of people, and if we do that, like I said, they have a fighting chance. But if we don't, I mean, we're just adding to their stress. Or the most and think about
Mm-hmm.
this, and I know I just said it, the most anxious generation in history, the most medicated, the most depressed, they're the most substance abuse generation. It is staggering, and we have a chance as business leaders to help stop that. And I think that's really important.
Mm. That's so powerful. We have a chance as business leaders to stop that. I love that. So there any specific challenges or barriers that we didn't cover that employers often face when addressing mental health in the workplace? And if so, how can they overcome those challenges?
Well, I think being open is a big one. Being open to change and challenges in the workforce. And we've been lucky enough here, we're a marketing, branding, and advertising agency. So I get that we can be a little bit more lenient on how we do things. You don't have to come in at 8 a.m., right? You can be a little bit more soft, I guess, in those kind of rules.
Mm-hmm.
But we've brought a lot of things into the workplace, which we're in South Carolina, and it's very unpopular to do things that are progressive in the South. And we brought things like unlimited vacation. And unlimited vacation, it's linchpin is based around trust. It is, you're going to get the job done, and so take your time if you need it. And can it be abused? Sure. Will it be abused? Statistically, no. And you might have one or two people who just kind of take a little bit more than everybody else, but they self-regulate because that's their colleagues look at them and go, "Hey, didn't you just already take a week vacation?" And they want to do a good job for people who believe in them. And so it doesn't get abused. But it's things like that. It's being open to a new landscape of work. And I know it's very challenging now. I mean, COVID threw a monkey in the wrench. Working from home and then coming back and then not knowing where they should go and should they be at home or should they not? Do you have hybrid? And it's confusing, and every business is different. It's not a one size fits all, but you have to listen to them. And so we've done a lot, and we could probably do a lot more, but we've done a lot on acceptance and affirmation. Any gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, religion, it doesn't matter. We treat everyone the same. We want people to be taken care of. We've expanded maternity leave policies to family leave policies, which includes same-sex couples and dads even. We help subsidize adoptions. We do all those things because, again, it's not the money. It's not the cost involved. It's the cost if you don't do those things. And maybe not those things specifically, but if you don't address the needs of this new workforce, they don't want money. They don't want $100,000 job if they're being berated and they don't feel safe. They want a $50,000 job that gives them flexibility to take a mental health day, for Pete's sakes. And everything is being flipped on its head. And again, there's no one size fits all to what's right for your business in your sector, in your town, in your city and state. And who knows what that is? And it could be the size of your business could determine what you should be doing holistically. But in general, we just need to be kind to our staff and not take that approach that you've heard people say, which is, I don't want to babysit them. But it's a privilege to be able to be the ones who speak into their lives. I mean, I think it's an unbelievable opportunity to help create an environment that can do good things. And that's what I'm about.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, taking those steps says you matter. People matter. And I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather hear I matter and I'm valuable to your company than make $100,000 a year.
Right. Now, if you do both,
good
for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. Right. It's a win-win for everybody. Right.
Right. My 20-year-old son, this is just an interesting side note before we move on. He's super transient. We're in Greenville, South Carolina. He took a gap summer. I guess he's working remotely, does social media content in Atlanta. He's moving with his girlfriend to Memphis. He's never been to Memphis. He's just like, I hear it's cool. I'm going to go, the cost of living there is nothing. I'm going to go rent a home there for 6 months and see if we like it. That kind of like ability to just pick up and leave it's remarkable. I mean, we've never had those opportunities because it was entrenched in us to do things a certain way. And so consequently, people who manage and employ those people have to be willing. It has nothing to do with his job that he wants to move to Memphis. He's just looking for, something that's real and tangible because all he sees all day long is fakeness on digital social media. So I think that's the cool thing is that we had this opportunity to embrace that. Like, okay, wow, what can you do in Memphis that I couldn't do from here? How can we still utilize your abilities and skills from where you are? That's the cool part. We have a way to change our thinking here.
Yeah, love that. So how can organizations foster a culture of open communication and destigmatize mental health concerns in the workplace?
I mean, it starts from the top. It absolutely starts from the top. And if you don't model, no matter what we're talking about, by the way, but if you don't model the behavior in which you seek, you're destined to not see the outcome you want. So I'm very open with my struggles of I had a suicide attempt years ago, but I'm on anxiety and depression medicine. I take it daily. I used to think, and this is foolish of me, but I used to think, medication was for weak people. It was for people who needed a crutch, who needed an excuse. And my wife, God bless her, she helped me see that it's actually, there's depression doesn't mean sadness either. And I realized that I've had depression my whole life. I'd never articulated it that way because I'm like, I'm not sad, right? But and it manifests
Mhm.
differently in different people. But for me, I didn't look physically sad. I just might not have the will to do something, or I might just be stuck in a mood, or I couldn't regulate my emotions, or whatever it was. And what I found is that I can be a better person. I can be me. I can feel like who I really am when I'm taking the medicine that's been prescribed to me. So I'm very open about that.
Do you want hands on experience as you decide what career you want to pursue? Through on the job training, work experiences, and apprenticeships, Central Missouri Job Center staff are ready to help set you up for success today. Learn more about our on the job training program, an excellent opportunity to get hands on experience from an employer while earning a paycheck. It's a win win for everyone. Employers get the workforce they need, and you get the experience you need. Or there's our work experience program, available to job seekers ages 14 to 24 with little or no work experience. This provides the opportunity to meet with prospective employees while also taking advantage of critical workplace training. Gaining work experience gives you the needed work background to secure future jobs. Or there's our registered apprenticeship opportunity, which is an alternative earn while learning combination of training and employment. Apprentice workers gradually earn more as they reach higher levels of productivity and receive a nationally recognized occupational credential. To learn more about our work-based learning programs, visit cwdregion.com/learning. That's cwdregion.com/learning today and find the Central Region Job Center near you. I will also share the link in the show notes for you.
And because I've been open about that, and my wife is a mental health therapist, by the way, and I've seen a talk therapist for years, and I believe in the healing power of that, of working through issues for me personally from my childhood
Absolutely.
that I didn't deal with. I can now. I don't have to say to my staff when I was 6 years old, this is what happened to me, and therefore I don't have to do that. I mean, that's a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Now there might be certain individuals that I might want to relate to, or them to relate to me, and I might share a particular
Right.
story. But me just saying, hey, because of the way I grew up, because of the way that I struggled through life, because that just a broken man in general, I sought this counseling, which has made me better. I'm really happy to say that one of our biggest clients is actually a regional psychiatric kind of outpatient psychiatric they call themselves um, medication management partners. So um, we partnered with them to allow any of our staff to go there for $15 every visit instead of the
Wow.
$300 it takes to start, because we think that's important. So we model that, right? We talk about
Mm-hmm.
the importance of that. We celebrate Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. We talk about Suicide Prevention Month. I've particularly done, but with our photo and video team, videos talking about suicide and why that's super important to talk about and to stop people and to look for warning signs. And because most all of us have children or brothers or sisters or definitely have parents or spouses or something. And I mean, suicide ideation, depression, anxiety,
Yeah.
fear of any kind, it knows no bounds. It doesn't matter who it is. So it's modeled from me. It's modeled from my other leadership team members, talking about their struggles on their terms, whatever they feel comfortable with. And
Mm-hmm.
through that, we've seen people come to the other people that they're comfortable with and say, would you mind helping me find somebody, or can you get me into this place, or would you make a referral for me to whatever, how do I get into this program? We try to keep it as anonymous as possible, but the beauty of it is we've all realized that I think we figured out, now I wouldn't quote me on this, but I think it's like 80% of the men here have sought some sort of therapy at some point in the last 2 years. It's something. So but we
Mm-hmm.
talk about that and we say there's no shame in it. It's not weak. It makes us stronger. It's that's
Absolutely.
the and that's been really fun. So I don't know if there's an answer, a one size fits all to talk about how to do that in your own culture, but I think it's modeled from the top.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, we can't live in today's world and not be affected by it at all. I mean, and you definitely wouldn't want to know me without my therapist. So I'm I'm grateful to have one. And again, I think there used to be this stigma that you couldn't talk about that or you were weak if you went to counseling. And I'm like, I think you're brave. I think you're brave for dealing with your junk. And I
Right.
think we need to talk about it more.
Yeah, I wish somebody would have told me that
So
when I was younger. you
yeah,
know
me too. Me too.
Sorry, you were saying.
So let's talk about some. That's okay. Let's talk about some myths for a second. What
Sure.
what are some common myths, some common misconceptions surrounding mental health in the workplace, and how can we debunk those myths?
Well, I think one we just talked about, which was that it's only for weak people. Mental health only affects the
Mm-hmm.
weak. Only women suffer from depression. I've heard that a ton of times too. No, it's not the case. Actually, a lot of men actually rival statistically women. It's just that the men aren't brave enough to talk about it because it hasn't been modeled for them. And so that's a huge thing. Um, Another one is that if you're depressed, you can't do your job, or if I tell my boss I'm going to get fired, or that my therapy isn't covered by my health insurance. There's so many things, and that depends on obviously who your carrier is, but there's so many things that people are afraid of asking because they believe these myths. And so I do my best to just try to hit it up front. When we have a new hire, we go through everything. Here's what we do: we subsidize the first $350 of anybody's therapy, whether it's, get this, this is actually pretty cool. Whether it's for your child, for you and your spouse, for yourself, talk therapy, or whether it's, psychiatric therapy, we'll subsidize the first $350, which depending where you go could last 1, 2, or 4 sessions. And
Mm-hmm.
because we know that the first step is the hardest one to take. So we want people to know that we're helping you. We're going to
Right.
walk that journey with you. So sometimes it's just being like, lay out what's available to them. And I know a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, well, we don't offer anything. Well, okay, well, you can offer your ear, you can listen, you can make an environment that's conducive to having people share their stories. You can give somebody a day off when they're hurting from something. Those are the things you can do. I mean, there's a lot of big things you can do, but there's a lot of small things you can do. And the small things in many ways are bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we have to start somewhere, so let's start small.
Hmm.
But as we're starting somewhere, I think that's what matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about remote work for a minute. So the rise of
Hmm.
remote work, the challenges it presents. How can organizations ensure that remote employees are receiving adequate mental health support?
Yeah, that's another good one. We are fortunate enough to have most people back in the office because they want to be. We have this environment where they want to be together rather than separated. But we're
Hmm.
flexible enough so people need to be from home. But there's a lot of organizations and a lot of my colleagues and friends that I have that run agencies that are mostly remote or mostly hybrid. They don't know what's going on. And there, the activity by proxy idea that, oh, if they're logged on Skype, that dates me, right? If they're logged onto Slack, it appears that they're working. It's not just that. It's that, let's just not make sure they're working, because that you're putting in this fear that if they're not working, they're going to get in trouble, or that you don't trust them. Let's talk
Hmm.
about, are they okay? Has anyone checked in on them? Do they have adequate support where they are? We have one girl here who's um, thinks she's going to start a life with somebody in a different state, or sorry, a different city in our state, and ask permission to move down there and work remotely and come back just for major functions. And I said to her, yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing: you've never lived with somebody before. This is the dad in me. You've never lived with anybody before. This is kind of a new relationship. I think they've been together, but like long distance for like 8 months or something. You've never worked from home alone before. You don't know what that's going to be like. What you're working alone in a new city that you don't know anybody except your boyfriend, and that's going to be predicated on how well you're getting along at the time. So make sure you have the right support system around you. Make sure that you have somebody you can talk to. Your colleagues back here that you're really close with, make sure you're talking to them on Slack every day or texting them, or you have to make sure you connect with your employees that are off site. And it doesn't have to be work related. That's the crazy thing. It doesn't have to be super personal
Hmm.
either. You don't have to get weird and inappropriate, but in the sense that just
Right.
check in on them. How are you doing today? Like, do you need anything? When we were all home for COVID, and I know great businesses did some really cool things, but we sent people. I think we all had a common, if I recall correctly, I gave everyone a voucher for like Chick-fil-A or something, and everyone could order like DoorDash, and we'd eat a meal together once a month or once a week. I
I
can't
love
remember.
that.
And it was like just on Zoom. And that's like,
Yeah.
can you do that with people? Just make sure you're connected with them somehow. And I can't speak to it like
Yeah.
the efficacy of this because we're not remote, but those little moments, those turn, like I said, they turn into big moments. It's the little things that matter.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, how can employers strike a balance between supporting their employees' mental health while also maintaining, performance and productivity?
And listen, that's the $1 million question. That's really difficult. You don't want to be and this might sound callous, because you can either be like wishy-washy on this, or you can come off really callous, or you can come off really bleeding heart. And
Mm-hmm.
this is why it's so difficult, because um, you want to say your mental health is the most important thing to our company. You want to say that. I think as humans, you want to say that. But my
Right.
responsibility is to, in this, not our shareholders, we have one, it's our owner, but my responsibility is to him and make sure that we're profitable. And if everyone is out because they're all on a mental health day and we miss a deadline, then a client gets affected, their workers might get affected, our relationship might get affected. That might change profitability, might change how our head count.
Right.
We might have to lay people off. So you could set things in motion which have dire consequences for your staff. And so it's really difficult to weigh the option. So the best thing I know how to do, and I don't know if this is right, but this is what I do, is really care for them to a point where I'm equipped and able to. And when I see a point where it's starting to affect business or their performance, be honest with them and say, it appears right now that you're something like this. It appears right now that you're struggling with some things which are really untenable. And we've already, probably at this point, we've already gotten them as much help as we can from a business. And we don't want you to suffer. And what's happening is, if we continue to go down this path, it's going to affect more people's work and not just yours. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
look at that as an opportunity to say, can we find a better fit for you? If it's not within the business, is it outside of the business where it's not going to be as stressful or as demanding or whatever it is? Because I need to help everyone else. And it's not, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And it's really hard to do
Right.
that. We've had to do that one time in 4.5 years, and it was heartbreaking. Um, and this was after exhausting every possibility to help this individual out through multiple channels, and we weren't equipped for it. But you realize that we became a burden to them as well, because now we just became another thing on their plate, which they felt inadequate to perform. And
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm more, and this isn't their words. I'm sort of making this up now, but the actual thing happened. But in the case of saying like, oh, now I'm worthless, and now I have to do this job, and I can't do my job well, so I can't even do that well. I can't have a relationship, and I don't know how to do this, and I can't meet and those things just weigh on people. So it's almost kind to be able to say, we're going to absolve you of this. And in this case, we actually gave a great severance and allowed them time to recoup and not put the pressure on them. But gosh, that is so hard, because your heart breaks for them. And if it was my son or daughter or brother, or it's, you want them to be able to succeed. And it's, gosh, that is
Right.
so hard. But in that particular case, there was nobody else who could help step in. We needed to replace that role because that role was so pivotal. It turns out for this particular individual that they're much happier now. And I believe they found something, and the pressure of them performing here was actually outweighing the benefit for them personally. And so it ended up working out. But
Mm-hmm.
man, that is so hard. I mean, it is so hard because you want to help everybody, and you just, we're not a nonprofit. We don't get unlimited funds. We have as much funds as we have clients that pay us. And at some point you have to make tough
Right.
calls. I do not envy people who have to go through that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you have a bottom line. You have you have expectations. You have to make a profit, of course. So it's definitely finding that balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about some tools and resources for a second. What resources, what tools are available for employers who want to improve their understanding of mental health, who want to not only understand it but also provide that support to their team members?
You know, where I go is I go to LinkedIn, and it might sound silly, but there's a lot of groups. I think there's a lot of Facebook groups as well, but I go to LinkedIn and I find mental health advocacy groups, mental health in the workplace groups. I belong to a lot of them, and I just share ideas. I'm also I learn a lot from them too, by the way, but I'm also in our industry in a lot of different forums where either agency owners or leaders and small groups get together and share ideas within our industry. And a big one that's come up lately is work from home and those challenges, and hybrid work and those challenges, and definitely mental health challenges, and the younger generation we talked about earlier. So I just try to glean that. There's a lot of stuff. I don't know the website offhand. Maybe we can put it in the show notes or something, but
Sure.
The suicide prevention group, the national one, does a lot of great work now. The advocacy groups for, I think we mentioned, LGBTQ plus communities in the workplace who deal with depression, anxiety. I just Google things, and I just start conversations, and I look if I need to help understand how to deal with somebody who might be transitioning at the workplace and is going through ridicule and because of it, depression. And how do I both coach? This didn't happen, by the way, but I can see it happening one day. How do I both coach people in the business to be kind and careful and understanding, and how do I coach the individual on here's some ways to deal with all these things that are happening and whatever. That's what I would do. I would look, because I'm not an expert, and I have to go look for people that are smarter than me. Now, in this case, I
Mm-hmm.
can also go to my wife,
Mm-hmm.
who's a mental health therapist and who works with a lot of those communities
Right.
we've mentioned. So I get a little bit of a pass there. But yeah, I want to create a place that's safe for anybody, regardless of what their situation is or how they look or feel or talk or act. And and in many cases, nine times out of 10, I have to go elsewhere to be better equipped to do that. So for people who are listening, I know I'm not answering your question, but for people who are listening, I go to sources that are better. It might be the Trevor Project, who does a lot with gay high schoolers, who I was with Dr. Martins, and we partnered with them years ago to do some great work, and I was really fond of the work they've done. I have a friend who used to manage the suicide hotline in the country. They just changed that phone number to, I think is it 988 now? Gosh, we should put that real number up there. But
Yeah, I'll find it and put it in the show notes.
and just the fact that they moved from that long 800 number to a 3-digit number that's accessible from any mobile phone or landline. I mean, they saw, I think it was like 50x calls, the day that it had, and the sustained rate. It just
Wow.
tells you how many people are in need. So I just go to those sources and ask, and just say, hey, I'm a business leader, or I'm faced with an issue I don't know how to deal with. And um, mostly you'll find somebody in the community who is a like position as yours, who is in a like situation. You'll find somebody who's willing to talk about it. Again, I find a lot of resources on LinkedIn, of all places. You wouldn't think that would be the place, but it's a
Yeah.
lot of dear friends I found, actually, who are going through similar experiences too.
Well, that's what LinkedIn is about, right? Networking and connecting, so it makes sense.
Supposed to be, yeah, it's supposed to be, not just finding your next job.
Right, right. Well, before we close out today, one more question. So
Sure.
what advice do you have for employees who might be still hesitant or unsure about seeking help for their mental health at work?
Yeah, first of all, the fact that you're even asking, I'm sorry that that's your situation. It's a shame that most businesses today don't look upon people, or who are struggling with something like this, with kid gloves, and I wish they did. And the fact that you even have to ask that in your place of employment says a lot. So I would ask, if you have an HR team, I would ask your HR team, like, what resources are there for mental health, conditions or advocacy, or however you want to put it, and just ask what could be done. I would challenge a lot of people, if there isn't something in your workplace, and you're not currently dealing with something, but you have a heart for this, to go to your HR team and try to figure out a way to install a mental health advocacy program within your workplace. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's so important. And I wouldn't be afraid to bring it up to somebody. You might not feel comfortable saying this to your boss, again, unfortunately, but talk to a senior leader, talk to somebody in the HR team if you have one, and just say, I might be struggling with some things, and I just want to know the policies around me taking some mental health days, or is there any kind of subsidy for me seeking some help, or whatever. I think most people would be surprised at the kindness of people, especially in this newer generation that are dealing with more of this. I mean, this is becoming prevalent across the country. And if you don't have a good reaction, and if you're able to, go find another job, because you don't want to be in a place that is looking at you as a weak link in the business, just because you're going through something. Because I'm telling you right now, that's BS. You're not a weak link.
Mm-hmm.
You're important. You're very valued. And if they don't see that in you, then find a place that will value you for who you are.
Yeah, and I would also just add, I think that I think people are still learning and they're still
Yeah.
wading through the waters. So I think there's definitely those employers out there who they're on board with it. They just need some help making that happen. And of course, there are those employers out there who are like not interested at all. But I think more so than not these days that they just need some help figuring out how to make that happen.
Yeah, and you know what? I said this earlier too. As a Gen Xer who has, like I said, 6 children who are Gen Zs, I think it's right now. It's on my mind as well. Not just because I struggle with some things, but because my children are entering the workforce. And right now, only 2% of the workforce is made up of Gen Z. But by 2025, it'll be nearly 20%. So I mean, if we're not dealing with this now, they're coming, and they're
Right.
loaded with anxiety that we've never dealt with. I mean, this is part of the talk I gave a couple of months ago. Their biggest fear is mass shootings. I never had to deal with that growing up. I was in college when
Wow.
Columbine happened. Actually, Columbine happened right down the road from where I was. I went to the University of Colorado. That was the first big deal, and now it's becoming a daily event where that's the number one worry statistically for Gen Z
Wow.
is worrying about a mass shooting. Because of that, like, I mean, just think about that alone. Are you doing anything at the workplace to help? What happens when you do let somebody go? Do you take their keys, or do you make sure you change the alarm code? Like, what are you doing to make everyone else feel secure? Because if that's their number one fear, you have
Mm-hmm.
to imagine they're thinking that at work as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's it's the political division in the country. It's immigrants. There's a litany of things that they're worried about the most and how we're going to deal with it. And it's not the things that we thought about, which was recession and war. It's like it's not that it anymore. It is more close to home.
Right.
It's on their street. And so I think a lot of leaders who are now experiencing children who are now coming into the workforce, they're now going, crap. I can now see I mean, half the kids here who work for us are younger than my eldest daughter. And I'm like, wow, it's happening. It really is happening now. And so we have to look at this and go, change is possible. And you're right, they want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So let's show them a good way to be human about it. Treat them like your children, keep them safe.
Love that. Love that. Well, I think that's a great way to end. You gave us some stuff to chew on and think about and process through, and I appreciate it. Before we close out today, is there anything else that you want to add?
Gosh, I would just echo what I said a minute ago, and that's that if you're struggling with anything, know that you're not alone. Know that people are out there doing with the same thing, and it's not a weakness. And if there's a way that you can find some help, do it, and be proud of doing that because the ones who do come out the other end a lot better. And we want you around, we want you here, and I see value in everybody. So that would be the one thing I'd say.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for that. And where can our listeners learn more about you, Kyle?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Like I said, just search for me, Kyle Duford. I'm all over the place. I'm that Kyle on Instagram and now on Threads, which came out this morning. So you can find me there. I'm unfortunately not on Facebook because I'm not 65 and my mom. But other than that, you can find me other places.
Okay, great. And we will share the link to that in the show notes as well.
All right. Well, thanks so much for
Well,
having me. I
Kyle,
really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on with us today, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know about you, but that was a lot to chew on. And at the same time, I feel empowered to apply some of the principles, some of the strategies that I learned today with Kyle in today's episode. If you're leading a team, I hope that you walk away today with some insights and ideas to take your work environment to the next level. And if you're a team member, I hope that you walked away today with some resources and some tools that can help you to continue improve your mental health. I don't think we can ever really do enough to grow in that area. So I hope we all walk away today with what we need to be able to take the next right step in that. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, would you mind sharing it with somebody else that you think could benefit? We would be grateful for that. And don't forget to take advantage of all the Job Center services available to you. You can find your nearest Job Center or affiliate location at cwdregion.com/jobcenters or find the link below in the show notes. That is it for us today. Have a great week, and we will meet again in the next episode. Until then, remember this: there's always a brighter tomorrow if you're willing to find it. The Central Region Workforce Development Board Incorporated and COPIC are equal opportunity employers and programs. Auxiliary aids and services are available upon request to individuals with disabilities. Missouri Relay Services at 711.